thanks for joining the podcast. I've actually heard great things about you from the FCS community, and I think one of our colleagues, Jeremy, also had met you in one of the events and was constantly saying good things over a few months. So
Thank
thanks
you.
for coming on the podcast. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for
Before
having me.
before we dive in, Rebecca, I have a lot of questions to ask you. I would love to get a quick introduction from you in terms of your current role, what you're doing, and then again, jumpstart into the discussion.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. And again, thank you for having me on the podcast. It's so nice to get to know you, and it was lovely to meet Jeremy at the FCS. So a little bit about my background. I am currently the Chief Marketing Officer at Jennison Associates, which is an affiliate investment manager of PGIM. PGIM is the investment management arm of Prudential. So we are, obviously an affiliate of Prudential. Our main line of business is active equity and fixed income products that we market across the board to institutional investors, retail clients. We have a large sub-advisory business as well. So work very closely with PGIM on distributing a lot of our products. But yeah, we're in the active equity and fixed income space.
Awesome. Very helpful, Rebecca. Hey, I was looking at your background. I think one thing that popped out was you actually moved from JP Morgan to Voya when Voya was probably an unknown brand in the market, right? And obviously everybody knows JP Morgan, right? So I just want to understand your experience moving from JPM to Voya since Voya was pretty unknown. How was that experience? What did you learn? What did you learn from that experience? It'd be helpful to cover that.
Yeah, when I joined Voya, I think the brand was about 5 years old at that time. Very different than the 175-year-old brand that I had been at for a long time. I remember being at JP Morgan and one of our sales team members said to us, when I put my business card down and it says JP Morgan, everybody knows us. It's very easy to sort of establish a relationship, get a meeting, that sort of thing. And the complete opposite was true at Voya. There was a lot of discussion about who Voya was. At that time, we were ING and spun out to be an independent, financial services firm. It was retirement services and investment management. So it was quite a different experience for me having to really reestablish ourselves in the investment community and start to build a brand, which although at JP Morgan we did a lot of brand work, it was a continuation of what people know about JP Morgan. At Voya, it was really putting the stake in the ground and establishing who we are with our investors and ensuring the experience met the brand promise as well.
And was it a tough decision in your mind to move from a very well-established brand to an unknown brand because of the fact that you will have to create something from scratch, right, at Voya?
Yeah, I mean, that was actually the draw for me. It was a very conscious decision. I really wanted that challenge and really wanted the opportunity to help build a brand from scratch, really. And so it was in the investment management space, particularly in the institutional area that at the time Voya was primarily focused on. It wasn't as hard only because the lineage of ING, the story had already been established. Our investors well understood that. The harder part was building the brand in the retail space. And it was a lot of fun, a lot of hard work, but a lot of fun. It was really gratifying to start to see a lot of the metrics and the analytics around some of the campaigns that we were doing really bearing fruit and really starting to move the needle from a brand perspective.
That's great. And one question on that piece, Rebecca. So what is your general guidance, or we can take Voya as an example. A lot of early stage companies, smaller brands are trying to, get mind share and stand out in a crowded market amongst both retail, institutional folks, etc. For a smaller brands like that, what is your general guidance on how do you stand out? Any pointers from your experience at Voya would be helpful.
Yeah, the approach that I've taken my whole career is really going to the heart of the product. So ultimately, and at the end of the day, we're selling financial
Right.
products. And I think the most important part of marketing is to be true to who you are and exactly what you're doing. So I personally spend a lot of time getting to know our investors, getting to understand our product, our process, how might we be different, and how do we sort of pull those differentiating factors out from a brand perspective. So I often will talk about, we talked about this at the FCS, marketing from the guts out. So really getting to the core of the product, building that story, really understanding what differentiates the individual product. But in a lot of cases, and this is very true at Jennison, there's a distinct and unique characteristic of a Jennison portfolio or a Jennison product. And that's what helps us build the brand at the highest level. So we truly are active investment managers, and we sort of build the story around that. A lot of people can say that, but we do have some unique characteristics that we like to draw out. And that's really how I think about building the brand, because ultimately that's the experience that our clients will be getting and should be getting.
Just to if I repeat what he's saying, and correct me here, is that it's very important to really dig into the differentiation and point of view that Jennison or Voya has to offer in the marketplace that really distinguishes that company from other folks in the market. And once you figure that out, how do you use thought leadership and different types of ways to get that out to the market? Is that like a
Yeah. So I'll take, two examples, one from Voya, one from Jennison. When I was at Voya, our private credit and some of our alternative fixed income products were really where we were focused in terms of, getting those messages out to the market. And so, again, as I mentioned, I spent a lot of time with the investment team, understanding the process, understanding the product. And what I would start to do is pull out those key differentiating points and build thought leadership around what those points might be, whether it's access to deal flow in the market or sell discipline or something, a way we identify good opportunities and start to build a campaign around that. So in the retail space at Voya, we would build email campaigns, for example, and take them on a journey and walk them through different components of that message. We're doing the same thing at Jennison. So some of our recent thought leadership is around AI, and I know a lot of people are talking about it. We talk about AI as this wave, this sort of great wave that is ultimately going to transform how we all live and work. We started with the sort of infrastructure that needed to be built in order to power AI, and we're slowly making our way into different components of that wave. And that's truly how our investors are following this transformation. So it really is true to the heart of what our investors do every day. And that thought leadership is, we do a lot of our campaigns and a lot of our work hand in glove with the investment team. They're tremendous partners to us. And that is an important relationship in order to get these messages right, accurate, and out quickly in the market.
I love that. Just a side note on that, because I was speaking to a CMO of an asset management firm, and they're also really doubling down on interviewing their internal investment managers and bringing their point of view out to the market through different mediums, right? And it seems like very relevant to what you are saying, that it's very important for marketing teams to maintain a close relationship with the investment team just to get their point of view as well. I was curious to know, what are the different kinds of thought leadership mediums that you are using to at Jennison, for example? Is it webinars, video content, podcasts? What are the different kinds of stuff you're doing would be helpful to
All
me.
of the above.
As always.
All of the above.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, as you know, right? We're all human. We
Right.
all take in information in very, very different ways. And I think there's a statistic of it's either 7 or 9 times that you have to be in front of somebody before they may take action. And that's true in our personal lives as it is in our professional lives. So we see that in institutional asset management as well as we see it in the consumer space. So we take that very seriously, and to be out in front of somebody 7 to 9 times in very different ways. So we have the traditional thought leadership piece that can be printed or a PDF. We will get that out via email. It's on our website. We also put some paid advertising behind it. So we're hitting people in different, in their everyday, they're reading the Wall Street Journal and they happen to see an ad from us. We are also starting to create what we call interactive infographics. So as people come into our website, keeping them there with sort of an interesting, unique visual that they can kind of play around with. We just launched one not too long ago for our AI campaign, which is pretty cool. And then, as you mentioned, video has been and will continue to be an important component. Webinars, events, in-person events are always a big opportunity for us as well. So we hit folks across the spectrum with any number of media.
That's very helpful. And on that video piece, Rebecca, one thing, at least I've seen is a lot of marketing leaders want to invest into video, but video also is considered as a little hard one to execute, right? You need a team, it takes time, etc., to do it properly. What are your high-level thoughts on that one? And any thoughts on how you guys are doing video and video content would be helpful? And what kinds of content are these would also be helpful? Short form, long form, like different types.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's been more of to your point, a very scripted, structured. We've got all the lights and the, video cameras, and it's a very high-tech kind of experience. It can be quite off-putting, I think, for some of our investors who aren't used to the spotlight like that. We will shoot a couple of videos in one day. We edit them, we edit them down, we shorten them, we take snippets, we put them on LinkedIn, we use them in different ways. I think where we would like to get to, and I think where others are maybe further along than we are, is more flexibility in video creation. So the ability for somebody to easily create a video that is high quality, perhaps on their phone, on their desktop, that we can then take snippets and reuse them. Quality tends to be a bit of a challenge with some of the videos platforms that we've seen thus far to be able to do that. And then software to help us as marketers be able to edit and pull clips directly, I think is also quite important, which I know is near and dear to your heart.
Exactly. On that point, do you think marketing teams should think about repurposing content a lot more often because of the different AI tools? You can convert a blog into an image to different ways you can do it. Is there something that you sort of think about or advise teams to do?
All the time.
All the
the time.
Okay.
Especially because, as we talked about before, we spend so much time with our investment teams, and they really have been so generous with their time working with us. They know the value that these programs will bring for them ultimately, so they're willing to do it. But we also want to be respectful that their main job is to invest portfolios, not do videos and marketing programs. So yeah, we really try to create what the famous adage of create once, publish everywhere. So how can we reuse content that is more evergreen in a number of different ways? Obviously, as markets are changing, and particularly in this quite volatile market period, it's a little harder to do, just things are moving so fast. But where we have more evergreen thought leadership pieces, we do really try to reuse them in a number of ways, recut certain aspects of a video, reuse thought leadership pieces, shorten them into different like blog pieces and things like that. So for sure.
Very helpful. I'm just a slightly uh, tangential question. What is any examples or channels that you can share where you think it's not utilized to the extent it should be? For example, like email was very common in the early 2000s. Then social is getting a lot more popular, right? Anything like that that you think marketing teams should pay attention to get most of their dollars, Ravika, from your point of view?
Yeah, I wish there were financial services, as you know, is quite regulated. So a lot of the things that we would love to do as
Yeah,
marketers would also get us in a lot of trouble.
right,
So
right,
quite frankly, what I would love to see personally is greater use of, some text messaging or even Bloomberg messaging or, things. I think LinkedIn knocked it out of the park with some of their paid email
right,
programs early on. I think they're getting probably saturated now. But things like that to kind of keep it new, fresh, and really from a marketer's perspective, targeting those individuals who you're really going, really wanting to target. I think what's interesting to watch, especially from a financial services perspective, is things like Instagram.
mm,
So more and more of our larger competitors we see on Instagram, but they're more personal interest stories, and really putting a human element to some of those larger financial firms, because most people are on Instagram in their personal time,
right,
not
right.
necessarily at work. So it's interesting to see how successful they'll be. And for smaller organizations like mine, we're considering it, playing
Right.
around with it, but it's also something we have to be careful with from a compliance perspective.
Standpoint. And also it's a matter of focus, right? Since it's a small
Exactly.
team where you get to focus on one thing. But to your point, Abhika, I was surprised to see a couple of larger brands that I'm seeing on LinkedIn and stuff, the kind of video content that they share with their senior execs going and doing stuff. It's crazy. I didn't expect a firm like that in the FinServ space to do this, but you
But
are
it's also, I was surprised too, but I was surprised and not surprised, because I
ah,
feel like stories like that, I think, are what get people interested, right? It's hitting on a different emotional level, and that's ultimately what you're trying to do as a marketer
right.
anyway. So it'll be interesting to watch.
It seems like they're having a lot of fun doing it, and I was very surprised to see.
Almost too much fun.
Exactly. Great call out. Awesome, awesome. Hey, and on the next set of last questions, because a lot of young marketers listening to this, right? They want to be CMOs someday, right? But it's a tricky path to navigate this whole journey and get to the C-suite. So just like your learnings from your last decade in terms of what helped you get there, what have you learned along the journey? We can start there. I would love to help give your guidance on that.
Sure. I think what's helped me, and the advice that I would give to sort of junior marketers coming up the ranks is, doesn't matter what you're marketing. It could be a mutual fund product. It could be a widget. It could be shoes. It could be whatever. Really be curious about the product that you're ultimately marketing. Learn, be curious, ask questions, start to love the product. I personally invest in almost every product that I've marketed in my career. So, because I really believe in, I've gotten to know the people behind the investment. And for me, it was being curious very early in my career. I was in financial services. My degree is in psychology. So I had a bit of a learning curve trying to figure out this whole finance thing. But I was intellectually curious. And that, I think, is what is most important. And I think also becoming more specialized in understanding whatever the product is helped me as I grew in my career to become more generalized across the organization. So I spent a long time in fixed income, for example, and really got to know fixed income pretty well. All the intricacies of how we manage those products and things like that. And now I'm marketing primarily equities. So it's allowed to be able to specialize in one aspect of what you're marketing. When you're more junior in your career, I think is a really strong base to help you broaden as you grow, continue to grow in your career.
Uh, One very helpful advice I took from this is actually, uh, to your point, for example, you are actually investing in the products you are actually marketing because you will know what is going behind the scenes. Because that's when your other counterparts will also start trusting you as a key stakeholder and understanding what they are doing. So it's a very, very tactical and helpful advice on that piece. And as you have now been in CMO roles in multiple different companies, how is the CMO role different from other roles? Uh, let's say a VP of marketing or a director of marketing that you observed in general? Is it a lot of stakeholder management? See, like, what is it different from?
Yeah, great question. And I think it depends, right, on each. Well, it depends on how your marketing team is ultimately set up. But I think for Jennison, for example, my background, my primary background has been institutional marketing. But prior, when I was at Voya, I expanded my role across institutional as well as retail. But I had really strong channel marketers who grew up in the retail space. So that might not have been my primary background, but to have a really solid team, kind of working across both channels was super helpful. So in financial services or asset management, to be more specific, channel marketing is a key role, I would say, in the marketing department. And channels like institutional, retail, consultant relations, all of those are areas that any, a marketer could really dig their heels into, really get to know, and grow in their career. Digital is obviously a huge role within any marketing department. So these are just some of the areas I think make sense and really I think contribute to the success of a solid marketing team.
Yeah. And also to your point, as a CMO, it's very hard to be an expert across all these different channels and figuring out what you're not good at and surrounding yourself with a great team to augment you is also like something that you're advocating for clearly. And I've heard that from multiple folks, you can't be an expert in this because it's a very broad discipline. Right?
Yeah, it is. Again, it doesn't matter what you're marketing. I think, being an expert in any one area helps to grow your career. But when you get to a CMO level, you have to build a really strong team around you. I think you had mentioned, stakeholder management. I think that's a huge component of what marketing does. Particularly in financial services, marketing is not always well understood. So bringing your key stakeholders along for the ride with you, educating them, helping them understand what we're doing and why their input is so important to the end product, I think is a key component of any role really in marketing.
But on that point, just on the point, a very critical point you mentioned, um, is there like a KPI or like a few metrics you keep sharing with your stakeholders in C-suite every quarter, every campaign? Anything that you can share on that would be also helpful for teams to consider that as well.
Yeah, it's the age-old challenge in financial services marketing. In fact, it came up an awful lot at the FCS, and we now have a little working group off to the side trying to kind of figure out how do we crack this nut because we're all dealing with the same thing. So for every campaign, we do share back email metrics, which are quite specific because it's all from our Salesforce instance. So that's super helpful for our sales team. from the digital perspective and from paid advertising, we are showing views, open rates, click-throughs. I do struggle sometimes with sharing some of those because it's not super meaningful. If there's not an actual individual that we're able to target as a result of that open rate or that view or whatever, it becomes harder and harder to be specific with our sales team. So data is a huge component. We're working on that across the PGIM ecosystem together. So I'm hoping that will continue to improve. Where we can show real metrics and real momentum, I try to do that, which is mostly right now through email open rates and events and things like that. The other metrics that we're sharing back is press and how often we're in the press and what that would ultimately translate into hard dollars from an advertising perspective. So that's been quite helpful just for people to understand, if I have a one-liner in a Wall Street Journal article, that's actually contributing to brand recognition and brand awareness. So making sure they understand how important that is another part of the goal.
Oh, that's still very helpful. Thanks for sharing that. Awesome. Last couple of questions, Rebecca. What is any favorite book or movie that you watched or read recently that you would
when I have time to read? Well, I have an 11-year-old son who is a Harry Potter, fiend. So he has gotten me into the Harry Potter books, and I'm much slower reading than he is, but I'm making my way through them. But I will say we took him to see Harry Potter on Broadway over the summer, and it was phenomenal. So I really recommend anybody to go see that.
The one thing that I always wonder is if that series Harry Potter will die down as time passes by, but clearly is not, right? People still.
I think it's gotten stronger.
Oh, okay. Great. And then who's one CMO that you have watched, admire, that you sort of taken inspiration from? Anyone that comes to your mind would be helpful to know.
Yeah, I don't have any one person in particular, but I will say the team of people who worked on the Fearless Girl campaign with State Street, Steve Dale and the McCann team who worked on that. I know there's a lot of controversy around it, and there's been a lot of noise around it, but I think for most women who have worked on Wall Street or any woman really,
but especially in Wall Street, right?
Yeah. It was such an inspired campaign, and so many women that I work with have been moved by that experience. So for me, that really stands out, particularly in financial services and what we were talking about before, that sort of emotional connection. I think they sort of hit that one out of the park on that campaign. So again, it's not one individual, but I think it was probably a collection of great minds that brought that to life.
Helpful. I think it's good for the folks to go in now and watch that whole campaign and see what you're talking about. So super helpful. But Rebecca, thank you so much for doing this. I learned a lot. Appreciate your transparency in sharing all the information that you've shared. So it's very helpful for marketers who are up and coming to learn from other CMOs like you who have been there and sort of in the trenches right now. So thank you for doing that. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to do it.